All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is Asif Rahmani. I did have the pleasure to meet many of you either in person or online. I see it from the attendee list that we got going over here. So thank you very much for joining us today, me and also Raymond Mitchell. Raymond is going to be the presenter today, and he's going to be talking about business connectivity services in SharePoint 2010. Let me go ahead and put this screen out there. Here we go. Make it maximum. So I'm just going to do a quick primer on business connectivity services for those of you who have not worked with it before, or at least who have not dove into it as deep. You know, BCS, especially in SharePoint 2010, is one of the huge pieces that Microsoft is betting on. Because you think about SharePoint, and it's an amazing presentation layer for all of your enterprise data, right? Your enterprise information, automation of that data, and well, your enterprise data is not always going to be generated within SharePoint. Many times your data, of course, is already sitting out there somewhere. So getting information from SQL, from Oracle, from your custom databases, and from any other places, and Raymond will talk more about that, so I don't want to go too deep in there, but all these kind of things, you get information from there, you present it in SharePoint, and you present it the way you want it to be presented, and you give the proper security, you give the proper bandwidth that you want to give to this information, and that's where the real power of BCS comes in SharePoint 2010. So really excited to hear Raymond's thoughts today, and he's going to be showing lots and lots of demos on this. That's going to be the major part of this webinar, all about showing it to you. And then as we'll go on, there's a Q&A board that you see on GoToWebinar. Go ahead and put your questions there. If I have the answer, I'll go ahead and shoot the answer to you because I'll be also in just listening mode. And otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and queue it up for Raymond. All right. So Raymond Mitchell, he is one of the co-authors of SharePoint 2010 6-in-1, this book right there. You know, in this book, there's a couple of chapters on BCS, on Business Connectivity Services, and Raymond was the author, of course, for these chapters. So he's already been doing a lot of these things, and that's, of course, that's the reason that he's here and doing this webinar for you guys. You can follow him on Twitter. IWKit is his ID over there. He's a consultant and an author and a trainer in part as well. This webinar is sponsored by SharePoint-videos.com. I also know that a bunch of you people already know about SharePoint videos, but those of you who do not, let me go ahead and give you a really quick primer as to what our goal is at SharePoint videos. What do we exist? Why do we exist out there? SharePoint-videos.com, our main goal is to, of course, educate people, train people with these pre-canned videos that we have out there. And our motto, our main motto here is that, you know what, it's got to be a nicely, easily digestible video between about 8 to 12, 15 minutes at the most, and minimum or no PowerPoint at all. So the kind of demos that you're going to be seeing Raymond doing over here is going to be all on the site. Okay, everything is on the site. You can become a subscriber of the site of SharePoint videos, or you can also get DVDs that I'll be talking about in a minute as well for the videos. Now, one other main thing that you got to remember about the site is you see lots of powerful solutions being created in these videos, but there's no code being utilized, no runtime compiled code basically that's being utilized to make any of these demonstrations. There's 224 videos out there right now, and it's going to be 20 or so more going on within the next month. So, and all that stuff is no code whatsoever. Here are the DVDs that we have currently out there: SharePoint 2010 Fundamentals, SharePoint Designer 2010, SharePoint Designer 2010 Workflows, and also one that Raymond Mitchell has authored himself is the SharePoint 2010 Business Connectivity Services video tutorials. Okay, chock full of all demos. In fact, there's not one PowerPoint in there, just completely showing you exactly how the BCS functionality works. This DVD right now is out on the site. If you go to the Products tab on the site, you'll see this DVD. And currently, for the next few days, until Monday, I believe, it's on sale for 10% off. It's automatically, the price is 10% off, but after that, it's going to go into the regular price. All right, so take advantage of that if you could. In addition, one of the things that we hear a lot from our customers, people who have already been doing business with us and other people who we just interact with, that, one of the biggest challenges that we deal with is training our employees, training our contractors on using SharePoint the right way. So something we've been doing for a couple of years now is we do corporate licensing of all of our videos for SharePoint 2010 videos and also for SharePoint 2007 videos. We basically give you the videos and then you go ahead and deploy it on your site. We guide you as to how you deploy it on your site, and it's available to everyone in the corporation. So that works out really nice. We've gotten a lot of good comments about that from our customers. If you have a question on how you can make this happen, go to our site, click on the Contact Us, and let us know what your need is, and then we can help you talk through it. Okay. All right, that's actually it. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Raymond. So Raymond, you there?
I am.
All right. Let me go ahead and change the presenter here to Raymond. All yours.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which it looks like it might be already. All right.
Yep.
So hopefully, Asif, you guys can see that. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it just fine.
Like Asif. Excellent. So like Asif said, I don't have any PowerPoint slides or anything like that to show. I figured we'd just dig in and start working with the BCS and show what you can do with the BCS, and specifically with SharePoint Designer. That's pretty much where we're going to spend most of our time today, between SharePoint Designer and then with the website. So I'll go ahead and kick it off, go to Site Actions, and go ahead and edit it in SharePoint Designer, open up the website here. And then for those of you that don't know, SharePoint Designer has come a long way since SharePoint Designer 2007. With SharePoint Designer 2010, they've changed a lot of the look and feel. You have the ribbon up here on top. You've got the navigation bar along the left-hand side. And specifically, you've got this external content types section. And that's really where the bulk of the BCS content lives. So I'm going to go ahead and click inside of here. And I currently don't have any external content types defined. External content types are really the core of what makes up the BCS. And really, it's basically the mapping between your external systems and what SharePoint's going to be able to work with. So let's go ahead and create one of these external content types and see what that looks like. So up here in the ribbon, I'm going to click on New External Content Type. And then it brings up essentially the summary view of the external content type window. So we're actually going to go in here and give this a name. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be our sales regions. And I'm not going to put a space in there because then in the display name down here, we can actually clean this up and put a space in there and make it all pretty. So now we've got our name and we've got our display name. Down here you'll notice we've got this external system. Right now there's nothing mapped, and external content types have this concept of an external system that is really the system that you're going to be working with. So I'm going to click on this, and it's actually going to switch the view over to our operations design view. So notice that with external content types, you've got the summary view we were on, and then that operations design view. And we don't have any connections that are defined right now in our Data Source Explorer. So I'm actually going to go in here and say add a new connection. Now with external content types, you can choose, inside of SharePoint Designer at least, you can choose 3 different data source types. You can choose a .NET type, a SQL Server type, or a WCF service. For now, we're just going to go ahead and work with a SQL Server. That's a pretty simple example, and pretty common example. So we'll go ahead and press OK there. And then we get prompted to enter in some information. So things like the database server, the database name, and then we can name our connection as well. So I'm going to go in here and specify my database server, and then specify our database name as well. And that's just our AdventureWorks database. Down here we've got a couple different options for the user security that we can use. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and have it connect with the user's identity. There's a couple different options here that say connect with impersonated Windows identity or custom identity, and that's actually using the secure store, which is a little bit more advanced than what we'll be able to dig into today. But essentially using this secure store concept, you can have users log in with their normal account, but essentially have that mapped to another set of credentials when it actually talks to the external data source. So for now, we'll keep it simple. We'll just use the user's identity and press OK. That'll take a minute while it spins up, and it's basically just going out to the data source, making sure it can talk to it, and then bringing back all of the information that it can see about that data source.
So hey Raymond, some of the audience may not know of the software that you're using, of course. I'm sure most of them do, but the SharePoint Designer, right? That's what you're doing right now. In SharePoint Designer, you're an external content type. And how do you get a SharePoint Designer?
So SharePoint Designer is free, and it's essentially just a download. If we switch back out to Internet Explorer here, if you're on a SharePoint 2010 site and you go to Site Actions and Edit in SharePoint Designer, if you don't have SharePoint Designer, it pops up a really nice product page that essentially tells you how to get SharePoint Designer. So if you don't have it, that's a quick way to get to it. Otherwise, you can just go to Microsoft.com and search for SharePoint Designer, and you can download it for free from there. So back in SharePoint Designer here, our data source is populated, and we can go ahead and expand it to view all the different components that we have access to. So we've got our tables and views, and if you're familiar with SQL data sources or databases, this will make a lot of sense for you. So we're actually going to go after a specific table. So I'm going to expand the tables, and that's going to go out there and give me all of my tables. And I'm going to scroll down to the, well, what am I looking for? I'm looking for sales territory. There we go. So once you've found the table or the view that you want to kind of base your connection off of, external content types have this concept of operations. You can see external content type operations over here. And we don't have any that are defined, but it gives you some good information here. If you're going to have an external content type that is used by SharePoint to create an external list or one of the other things that we'll talk about, you have to have two separate types of operations, a read item operation and a read list operation. And if we right-click on sales territory here, you can see we could create these individually. These are all the different operation types that are available to you. So we could create that read item, we could create the read list operation, and then there's the create, update, and delete operations as well. Or you can use the cheating method, which is what I call them, I guess. It's not the technical term. But you can choose this create all operations, and it essentially is a wizard that walks through creating all of those operations for you. So we'll go ahead and click that, because it's really good for demos. It's going to read the information about that table and then pop up a wizard for us to fill out.
And Raymond, while you're doing this, could you, if you possible, increase the volume a little bit for your microphone?
Absolutely. Let me,
thanks. I just got a couple of comments here saying that if you could tell Raymond that.
Make it sound a little bit better. Does that sound
awesome? Good? Yep.
All right. So we've got our all operation. This is our wizard, basically. Nothing much to do on the first page here, so we'll hit next. And then this is how we create an operation. And essentially it has all the different field types that it needs, or pages and questions that it needs to create this external content type. These are the different columns that are out there in that table, and essentially you get to choose whether or not you want those as part of your external content type. Now, as we check and uncheck those options, we do get some errors and warnings down here. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and leave all of these in here for now. You'll notice on the right-hand side there's also a large number of properties that you're able to tweak and make changes to. But the nice thing is if your database is structured well, a lot of this is pre-populated for you. It knows that the territory ID is a primary key in the database, and so it's already mapped as an identifier. So that's pretty cool. So there's also a display name, so we could add friendly names for each one of these columns. And you can actually spend a fair amount of time in these wizards to get the data to appear the way you want it to. Again, for now, we don't want to spend all day in here, so we'll go ahead and click Next for now. And you'll notice down below it says it's strongly recommended to add a filter, a limit filter. We're going to skip that for now, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. We'll go ahead and press Finish. And you can see now we've got external content type operations that display on the right-hand side. So that's pretty cool. So now we've got all the operations. You'll also notice the icon changed, and so now it says that it has read, write, and search capabilities. So now our external content type is ready to use as far as SharePoint Designer is concerned. But there's one more thing that you need to do, and if you're used to working inside of SharePoint Designer 2007, this isn't really a natural step for you when you're configuring things like this, but you actually have to save it. So you'll notice there's a star up here that indicates it's not saved. There's a Save button right up here. So we can go ahead and save that. And that's going to push those changes out into SharePoint for us. So it's saving the definition of this external content type into SharePoint for us. And that'll take a few moments, hopefully not too long.
As this is going on, Raymond, let me throw out a question for you that one of our viewers, Craig, has. He's asking that can you connect natively to Oracle through SharePoint Designer?
That's a good question. Through natively, the connections only support SQL Server. As far as I know, there isn't a direct connector that kind of maps things from SharePoint Designer to Oracle, but you could do a .NET type, but then you'd be talking about creating that inside of Visual Studio. Your other option is if you've got some WCF services that kind of surface that Oracle connection, you can consume those with SharePoint Designer. So unfortunately, you can't go direct to an Oracle database from SharePoint Designer. But if you've got if you've got either the code know-how, you can do it in .NET, or if you've got someone that can build you a couple services, then you've got options to connect to it right from SharePoint Designer. Okay, and it looks like that's complete. Our star's gone away. And actually, if we switch back over here to Summary View, you can see it's populated a lot of information there as well. So we've got some permissions pieces that show up, fields. Again, our operation types are shown. And if we use the breadcrumb up here and go back to external content types, you can see our sales regions shows up there as well, along with some summary information. So now we've got an external content type. Unfortunately, an external content type, doesn't really buy you anything visual. It's not a great demo as is. I can tell you guys aren't applauding yet or anything like that. So what we really want to do is be able to work with this external content type. So I'm going to open up the external content type again. And then from there, if we look up here, we've got this lists and forms option. And essentially we can click up here and create what's known as an external list. And the external list allows you to show a external content type as if it was just a SharePoint list or library. So we can give our list a name, and then essentially we press OK, and it will go out there and create the external list for us, which is pretty cool. I'm going to skip this in SharePoint Designer for now, though, and show you how you can actually do this from the browser, just so we're not focusing too much on one tool. Now, in the videos, on the training videos, we actually show you how to do both. But for today's purposes, we'll come back out here into Internet Explorer. Oops. And we'll make sure the site's awake and happy. And then we're going to choose Site Actions and More Options. And we want to create a list. And we want to create an external list. And it's a little bit different than the, if you look at the custom list, you would be giving that a name and then choosing More Options. We're just choosing to create an external list. And then we'll go ahead and hit Create. And then from here, we're going to call this our Sales Regions list. And then we get to choose our external content type from here. And this is our external content type picker. So we're going to choose to select an external content type. And after a few moments, that's going to pop open a dialog box for us to select. It's a little bit slow on my machine. Once that pops up, though, we'll be able to get a list of all the external content types that have been defined in this system. So there we go. So here's our external data source. It shows you that, and then you've got your external content type as well. So go ahead and choose OK there, and then we'll choose to create our external list. So this is creating inside of SharePoint along the left-hand side. You'll notice we've got our site pages, shared documents, calendars, all that kind of stuff. These are all the lists that already exist out there. Now it's creating this external list. And even though it's going to show up as if it's just a SharePoint list, all the data is actually stored behind the scenes inside of our SQL Server database.
Hey Raymond, another question for you out there. A couple of people asking they're interested in seeing or just understanding your thoughts about if they want to access an Access database. So,
okay.
Sorry, access an Access database. What would be the best option? Should they use BCS for that?
That's a good question. The BCS is really meant for these SQL Server databases, the WCF services. It could certainly go against an Access database, but I think what you may want to take a look at is some of the new investment that Microsoft has made in Access services. Of course, that's not available with Foundation, so that's one bummer. But if you do have SharePoint Server, you've got access to Access services online as well, and so that's probably a better option for you to take a look at than trying to connect it with the BCS.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. There's so much investment that Microsoft has done on Access services, and it works wonderfully. I mean, creating databases, having the reports, and actually having interactivity directly through the browser for your Access databases is just an amazing, amazing kind of functionality. So definitely, I agree. People should look into the Access services as well to see what they can, what can it do for them.
Absolutely. And these demos always take a lot longer when we've got people watching, so just so you guys know. So that's still spinning. Actually, it came back now that I kicked it a little bit. So this is what an external list looks like. You'll notice it shows up just inside of our lists, just like it was a regular custom list or document library or anything like that. And it shows all the data from our SQL Server database. What's even better, we can go in here and we can actually update these fields because we chose to create all of the operations. It has the create, update, and delete components built in. So we could come in here, we could take a look at its Northwest Territory, and that's going to bring up the display view form just like it would for a regular custom list. And again, like I said, it's always a little bit slower when you've got 200 people watching you. So
that's actually a lot more than that now.
All right, so now this pops up and we can see again all the data, but then we can also choose to edit the item. So we could come in here and say, the cost last year, we know that was $1,000. And then we'll go ahead and choose Save. And that's actually updating the data behind the scenes in SQL Server.
So that's a lot of power you're giving to the user, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's another good point. That's why there are things like the permissions that you can apply to it. That's also why you have to specifically allow people to read and write back to the database. With SharePoint 2007, you could only read from the database. Now they've added this additional functionality so you can write back to the database, but you have to explicitly do it. So, and we'll actually take a look at that in a little bit as well, how you can create an external content type that's only supports read-only operations. So, all right. But with that, as you look at the list up here, you can tell that you get a lot of the same ribbon functionality. Obviously, it uses the same ribbon as you would get with a normal SharePoint list or library, but there are some options that are grayed out. So specifically, the datasheet view isn't supported, and there's a couple other things inside of here that aren't supported. For instance, the ability to create a column is disabled with an external list. And when you think about that, that actually makes a lot of sense. Your data is actually stored back inside of your SQL Server database, so where would that extra column data live? It really wouldn't have anywhere to live. You wouldn't want the ability for SharePoint to actually create that column in your external database. That'd be a little bit scary. And so they limit you there as far as what the normal functionality of a SharePoint list is. But what's really nice is you do have the ability to create additional views. So we can modify our views, or we can create new views as well. So we can choose to create a new view. We can base it off of the existing view. And then we've got the option to have all the same sorting and filtering options that we had, that we're used to seeing inside of a SharePoint list or library. So some really powerful stuff if you're bringing in external data, and then have the ability, to sort and filter on that data as well. But the external list is really just one way that you can use these external content types. One of the other really powerful things that you can work with or leverage is what's known as a business data column or an external data column. So let's go ahead out here to our shared documents, and we'll actually take a look at what it takes to create an external data column. Asif, were there any questions I needed to hit before we move on?
Well, the external list, one thing, I actually didn't see a mention of that, but let me go ahead and throw the question out to you in this case. One of the other limitations, of course, is the workflows, right? So
absolutely,
you cannot put a workflow, like a SharePoint Designer workflows, which are awesome, and I talk about that quite a bit in a lot of videos, but you cannot use SharePoint Designer workflows directly on an external list. But the good thing, of course, is that now what you're going to be doing over here, you're going to be showing the columns. If you have a regular list in which you are showing external data as a column, then you can put a workflow on that list and be able to utilize that data, which is great.
Exactly. Yep. And so, and also, even if you're not using a business data column, if you've got a standard SharePoint list or library, workflows attached to that library can read and write to external data and other, in an external content type. So that's pretty cool. You just can't attach a SharePoint Designer workflow to an external list. So, All right. So with that, right now we've got this this document library, and it's got just the typical fields that you would see on there. I'm actually going to go ahead and on the other screen really quick, open up and create a Word document and make sure we can get that saved out there. Good. So then in our library, I'm going to choose to create a new column. And we're going to say this is our sales region. And then we're going to choose an external data, as our column type. And inside of here, we can choose what external content type we want to use. And again, we want to use our sales regions. And then that's going to populate down here which fields we have available to us. So down here, we're just going to choose the name. What's nice is you can actually display some other information as well. So we can show the group, we can show the country region code, we'd be able to show some sales data as well. And that's actually going to show additional columns just inside of the document library. You won't be able to set or modify those values, but you will be able to preview data that's associated with that external content type. So it's pretty cool. We'll go ahead and choose OK here. And then we'll go ahead and add a new document. So we'll choose Add a Document and Browse. And we're going to go ahead and choose this Word document and then press OK. And once we're done there, we'll get prompted to fill out some more information. So title, this is, my document. And then we're going to choose which sales region. And so this is actually going to pop up a different pop-up. This is an external data item picker. I think that's the name of it. They've all got fancy names. I can't remember them all. But essentially, this is going to show us all of the different items inside of our external content type. So we're going to be able to say, okay, this document is related to Germany, for instance. One thing I kind of blazed through when we were creating our external content type is there's actually an option in there to decide which fields show up inside of your pickers, inside of your item pickers. You can also define filters and searches for this picker as well. So if I go in here now and I say, Canada, and do a search, it's going to tell me that I haven't defined any filters, and so you should contact your system administrator. That's where you'd go back inside of SharePoint Designer, modify your operations, and then create a filter. And all of this is actually covered inside of the videos as well. So unfortunately, I don't think we've got time to go through it right now, but we'll just pick an option right now, press OK, and that's going to associate Germany with this document. So then we'll go ahead and press Save. And that's going to populate our document library with the new document. And it's got the sales region here. But then again, it also has the additional metadata fields that we selected when we created our business data column. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully you guys agree.
Oh, absolutely.
So now you've instantly added a ton more value to your Word document. So that's that. I think I was going to switch back to external lists again. Were there any questions specific to business data columns?
I didn't see anything specific to that, but maybe let me throw you a curveball here and ask a couple of things that are out there. Sorry. There's one, Stuart is asking, are external content type basically only available in Enterprise, or is he saying that with Moz this was the case? Is that still the case right now?
That's an excellent question. Actually, external content types are available with just SharePoint Foundation. So that's a huge change from SharePoint 2007. You actually do have the option to create external content types, external lists, and business data columns, all with just SharePoint Foundation. So that's pretty huge. One thing you don't get unless you've got Enterprise is the business data web parts, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But you do have the option to create these external lists, external business data columns, and then also this interaction that you've seen with SharePoint Designer. All of that comes with SharePoint Foundation. So
wonderful.
Not bad. Not bad for free.
Absolutely. It's a huge improvement from before, I think. And as you were saying before, there's a couple of questions here, one from Mary, one from Gautam over here, and they're kind of similar, so I'll go ahead and summarize this thing. They're talking about, you've mentioned 3 different ways of getting content, and right now you're showing the SQL Server stuff. But could you briefly mention why would we want to use a WCF, or why would you want to use a .NET type?
Absolutely. So a .NET type or a WCF service, it's really all about what data you have available in your environment. You know, if you've got a number of .NET developers that are familiar with creating WCF services, you know, and they're talking to maybe an Oracle database, maybe any other data source type, but they can create these WCF services, you're going to want to be able to use what your developers can create for you. There's lots of different reasons why you would choose one versus the other, but you know, it's really all about what do you have access to in your environment. The WCF service is nice because, again, if your developers can write it, it can talk to pretty much any system. The same is true for .NET. You know, creating these .NET types inside of Visual Studio allows you to talk to essentially whatever data source you would like. One thing that's a little bit different about the WCF versus the .NET, when you're creating an external content type based off of WCF services, there's a little bit more configuration that you could do inside of SharePoint Designer, whereas if you're creating an external content type based off of a .NET type, all of that configuration option is really stored within Visual Studio, and so you're not really creating as reusable a solution, I don't think, from the SharePoint Designer perspective. It's reusable in that you can use it all over your site, but you know, if you've got a SQL Server database or a WCF service that you've surfaced, your SharePoint designers, your content owners, or your power users can go out there and create these dynamic composite applications without having to open up Visual Studio all the time. Whereas if you've got you know, one more thing that you need inside of your .NET type for your external content type, you've got to go into Visual Studio and make that change. So hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely, Raymond. Did you want to go on, or do you want me to ask more questions? Whichever is okay with you.
Let's go ahead and go back into SharePoint Designer and do some of that. That's kind of fun. So we'll go back into SharePoint Designer here, and I think since it's already open, I just have to click on it. There we go. So I'm going to close that, go back to my external content types, and we're actually going to create a new external content type again. And this one, for new external content type, this one's going to be our sales team. And again, we're going to do the name and then the friendly name. And then one of the questions I saw earlier go by is, what is this office item type? That's a perfect lead into this, actually. So essentially, hang on one sec, let me mute so I can cough. Hopefully that mute's been working because I've been coughing all afternoon. So essentially this office item type is a way to expose your external content types inside of Office applications. So if you click the drop down here, it becomes a little bit easier to talk to. Contact is a really good example. So essentially if you've got an external content type that maps somewhat to a contact item, then you can actually export your external lists into Outlook. And then the contact is a native object inside of Outlook. You guys have all seen Outlook contacts. Essentially what this will do is make your external list available inside of Outlook as if they're just contacts. It's a really cool demo, and honestly, Asif, I can't remember now if I made that into one of the videos or not. I don't think it made it into the videos, unfortunately, but it's a really great demo, and I'll if it's not in there, I'll work with Asif to get it up on the website because it's just that cool. So essentially, you get to choose which Office item type that this external content type maps to. So for now, we'll go ahead and choose contact, and then when we look at our operations later, I'll show you a little bit more about how that works. So external system, we need to select that. So we're going to switch over to the operations view, and we already have our data source defined from last time, so we're just going to expand that. The nice thing is it stores all of those external data sources for you. So once you've defined a couple, it gets pretty easy to work with. So we're going to go into views this time, and we're going to look for the salesperson. And if we right-click on that, again, we've got, create all operations, or we've got the individual operations. We're going to walk through just what it takes to create a read-only external content type this time. So again, over here on the right-hand side, you can see that those are the two operations that are required in order for this to be used within a external list. So we'll try that out. We'll go ahead and create the new read item operation. And we're going to get essentially the same wizard that we had before with just a couple different options inside of there. All right. So we get to choose our display name in here. I'm just going to go ahead and click Next here. And then these are all of the different fields that are available for this specific content type, or for this specific external system that we chose. So again, we get to select which fields we want to use. And then you can see that the identifier is already mapped inside of there. So really there's not a whole lot that we can do here for input parameters. We're going to go ahead and choose Next. And then this is where we would get to choose which fields we would want to have displayed. So if we didn't want to show the sales data, we wouldn't necessarily have to. I'm going to leave all of them checked for now just so it's nice and easy. And then you'll notice that we still have an error that shows up inside of here. The following properties need to be mapped to data source elements compatible with compatible data types, last name or full name. This is because we selected that office type of contact. So it really needs to know for an office type of contact which fields map to what fields. So for instance, we'll go up here to our first name, and you'll notice we've got this office property. And then if we click on that, it's got all of the different properties that map to what you would see in an Outlook contact. So I'm going to go out here and look for first name. And then we can go to last name here and do the same thing. And this gets a little bit tedious, but essentially you see kind of how this would work. You can go out here and map this. So for instance, we'll do home address city here. We'll do home address post office box. Nope, postal code. That's what we want. And so essentially you would go through here and map all of these properties. Now the default is it has a custom property, and so that would show up inside of the Outlook contact as well. It just wouldn't be mapped to one of the fields that you would see in the Outlook contact. So I won't go ahead and map all of those, but you guys kind of get the idea there. And then we'll go ahead and press Finish here. Notice the icon here still has that warning, and that's because we still don't have a read list operation. So we'll go back out to our salesperson here and choose to create a new read list operation. And that's going to bring up a new wizard for us. All right, so we'll go ahead and click Next here. We're allowed to define those filters again. So actually this time I'm going to do what it says. I'm going to add a filter of type limit because these filters are actually pretty powerful. So, so what I'm going to do here is just say I get to choose which field I want to base things off of. I'm going to choose to add a filter. You get to add a filter name here. So I'm just going to put limit. And this is going to be a filter type of limit. And then I'm going to go ahead and just press OK. I'm going to set the default value there to, let's say, 200. So essentially what this is saying is when I'm pulling data back, I want to limit the items that come back to 200. I don't want any more than 200 items coming back. Sometimes it probably makes sense to set that lower, sometimes maybe higher, but you're really just making sure that you're not pulling back too much data from your external systems for performance reasons and then also just for stability reasons in your external systems. So we'll go ahead and press Next there. And again, we get to choose which fields would show up. But for now, I'm actually just going to go ahead and press Finish. And that comes back. Again, we've got the star here, so I'm going to go ahead and save. And that's going to push our changes for this external content type back out into the Business Data Connectivity Metadata Store. So out into SharePoint. It's a lot faster that time, thankfully. So now we're going to go ahead and create that as an external list. So again, site actions, more options, filter by list type, create an external list, and press Create. And who were these people again? They were the sales team, that's right. And let's see if we can get this to play nice sales. Oh, let's see. You know what? I don't think I remember it, so we're going to use the picker. It's either that or we wait for it to try to validate.
You know, one thing that helps usually is if you put your mouse counterclockwise, Or was it clockwise? Things go faster. Did you know that?
Yeah, I never remember. It's you know, and one of them slows you down, so you have to be careful. So. All right, so we've got sales team here along with our sales regions. Again, it shows you the external data source here, so that's kind of nice. If you've got two different external data systems out there, you know, with similar content type names, you'd be able to tell them apart. So that's kind of nice. We'll go ahead and choose OK there and choose to create. All right, let's see. We'll do counterclockwise a little bit and see how that goes. Clockwise feels a little better. I'm going to try that out, Asif.
I'll do it on mine too. Maybe we'll add on to yours.
There we go. and everyone watching too. We'll see if you guys can rotate clockwise too.
And as far as, maybe let me go ahead and throw out a question for you related to this thing over here. The permissions, if there were some different permissions, I believe Matt is the one asking that question. If there were different permissions that were set specifically on the SQL Server, and now you got, of course, different permissions being given from the BCS, how does that work out? You know?
Absolutely. So the BCS will enforce whatever permissions are on the external system. Right now, for demo purposes, just to make sure that the demo works, because it's always a little dicey when you've got a lot of people watching. I've got full access to the database, so we're not going to run into any permission issues here unless I do something really wrong. But in a real life environment, you're going to have permissions set on, you know, on the database for sure, possibly even at other levels within the database as well. And you do have there's kind of two tiers of permissions. Well, actually, honestly, there's three tiers of permissions. You've got permissions set in the external system, so in this case on SQL Server. You've got permissions set within the BCS as far as what account should I use to access the external system. Should I use my account? Should I use another person's identity? You know, how should I be connecting to that external system? On top of that, you do have the ability to set permissions for these lists, just like you would any other list inside of SharePoint. So there's really three different spots where you can configure permissions inside of BCS external lists. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of hard without walking through individual scenarios for each one of those, but hopefully hopefully you can kind of see there's lots of different ways to configure who can see and do what. So here's our external list. I'll go ahead and click on one of these guys and pop that open. And we can see what that looks like. So that's going to open up just the display form, just the generic display form for us. And again, when you first create one of these external content types, the data is essentially caching on the BCS side, on the server side, and so it does take a little bit to populate for the first time. But here's our view, and again, we've got all the data that we imported. But one thing that you'll notice, because we only created those two operations, is you don't have the ability to delete the item, and you don't have the ability to edit the item. And again, that's because we created what's essentially a read-only external content type. So that's kind of nice. The ribbon is still there for you. It maintains its consistency, but you don't have the actual option to edit and delete those items. So that's pretty cool. And if you go to the items, you don't have the ability to create new items either. So, but you do have the ability to view all of the different fields. And then, just like before, you can go in here and create a new view as well to view just the information that you want to see. So that's pretty cool. And again, one other thing I wanted to show you guys, if we go out here to view all site content and scroll down, let me see here. Yeah, there we go. So they don't get their own area, but what you can see is external content, external lists do get their own icon, and they get kind of their own special designation over here on the right-hand side as well. You'll also notice that it doesn't show you how many items are inside of that external list. And that's because it basically doesn't want to go out there and read every time you hit the view all site content. It doesn't want to go out there and say, hey, how many items are in this external system? Because that's a fairly expensive operation. So some nice things it does there for you.
Great. Hey, another one that people are asking over here is, can you, who's this person over here? Let's see, Rachel was the one? Yeah. You're asking, can we connect to analysis services cubes using external content type?
Oh dear, that's a really good question. I don't know that you can for sure, but I don't know that you can't either. I'm not 100% up to speed on cubes and what all you can do with that. I don't know, Asif, if you know off the top of your head.
I think what you can do in that case is that if you make a .NET type solution, an assembly, and that can access the actual cube information using data repeaters and everything else within code, so it would require some code. But then if somebody does that for you, then I believe you should be able to use the use the .NET type connector from BCS to be able to tap into it. So that should work, I think.
Absolutely, good point.
And by the way, folks, one more thing that I want to throw out there here. There's a third-party utility called BCS MetaMan. It's used to make some of the kind of stuff that we're showing over here, external content types and all. And it's actually it's pretty expensive when you go out and buy it. But the people who own LightningTools.com, they're the folks who make BCS MetaMan. They've authorized us actually to provide a couple of winners, a couple of people with the product, the actual product. And we're going to announce 2 people at the end, so stick around. We're going to announce 2 people at the end of this webinar who have won these 2 keys, and then both of you guys will go ahead and will receive the actual keys in the email for the BCS MetaMan, which is Meta Manager. Check that out.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, and Asif, I think I've got one more demo that I can walk through, and that's the business data web parts. Should we go ahead and kick that off?
Actually, how about we take some questions first, and
Sure.
let's do 2 or 3 over here. And there's actually been a lot of questions, so there's a lot of excitement around BCS, obviously. And let me go ahead and shoot some of these to you over here. Let's see. One here they're talking about Raj is asking this question, that if you had the capability to get to a system SQL server, let's say, you can get to it from WCF, and you can get to it from the direct native connection, of course, as well. Should there be a preference? Does WCF work slower?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head for that. I know that the interface is definitely different if you're using the SQL Server connection versus the WCF. The WCF, it points you to specific operations that you can do with data, whereas the SQL Server connector, like we've shown, it essentially says, hey, look, here's all the tables, here's all the views, do with it as you want kind of thing. Whereas the WCF, you're essentially building out the operations almost as WCF methods. And so, the SQL Server one kind of gives you a little bit more flexibility, I think, because it's essentially just going to show you what you've got access to. And if you've got access to it, you can basically surface it inside of the BCS. Now, what you have access to is sometimes a double-edged sword. There's probably some tables inside of there that you really don't need to see, but there's no reason for the administrators to block access to either. And so it might cause some confusion for users. If they see, for instance, with the AdventureWorks database, you can see dozens of tables inside of there. Some of those aren't going to provide you any value to look at, and so if you had WCF services that limited the scope of what you can see, sometimes that's going to be a little bit better. But as far as from a performance standpoint, I guess I'm not 100% sure, and I haven't seen any guidance out there on the web on it either. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but there's lots of data out there on the BCS. So.
Good points, very good points. There's another one out there. This is a little bit, it's actually very different in this case, but it's a very good question, so I want to throw it out there. I want to give the person credit as well, so let's see who's this here. It's Rick. So Rick is asking, can you use InfoPath as a UI to the interface with the external data?
Very good question. You absolutely can use InfoPath. Just like you can with a regular SharePoint list, you can go in and modify the forms for a regular existing SharePoint list. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but you can essentially update the out-of-the-box display and edit forms so that they're using InfoPath. And Asif, I'm thinking that that's only a SharePoint server piece of functionality. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know that that's available for you in Foundation. I think that's a server only. But
okay.
But yeah, you can go in there and you can essentially convert it over into an InfoPath form. It'll pre-populate it for you with what kind of the default values are, and then you've got all the functionality you would have in InfoPath to modify that. So.
And also, building on that thing, there's also a control, right, an info pad that lets you pull information from external content type?
There is. Yep, InfoPath, Word, and Outlook all have special controls and special interfaces with the BCS. So that's another one of the key investments they made in 2007. In 2007, the BDC was only available to you inside of SharePoint. With the 2010 and the BCS, you can actually surface and work with that data inside of your Office applications as well. So that's another focus point that they worked on in 2010.
Great. Awesome.
Asif, I'm seeing a good question here. All right, I saw it and it scrolled by. Where'd it go? But it was about associations, and it was basically, can you create associations? And is that something we're going to show today? It's not something we're going to show today, but you absolutely can create associations between your external content types. And in fact, we walk through it in one of the videos in the DVD series. But you can create, for instance, in our example here, we have a sales team and we have a sales region. There is a relationship there. There are sales members that work in specific sales regions, and you can define that relationship inside of SharePoint Designer. And then once you've defined that relationship, there's some additional functionality that's baked into the BCS, both with external lists and then with the business data web parts that we'll be showing here. So,
yeah, absolutely. Very, very powerful functionality. I had another person, Rob, also asking about that, so I was going to punt that to you. I'm glad you mentioned it yourself.
Very cool.
Great. Well, go ahead, and if you wanted to do the other demo as well. And folks, if you have other questions, I'm seeing all these questions. Raymond is seeing all these questions, so stick around until the end. We'll first do a raffle for the BCS MetaMan, and then we'll go ahead and do some questions as well.
Absolutely. All right, so for now what we're going to do, speaking of those business data web parts, we're going to create basically a simple dashboard view and just show how some of these business data web parts that come out of the box with SharePoint Server, how they allow you to work with this data as well. So I'm going to go into Site Pages and create a new page. We're just going to call this Dashboard. And then right away we've got a wiki page inside of SharePoint. I don't know how many of you guys have really worked with this a lot, but this is one of the key pieces of functionality they added in SharePoint 2010. Nothing to do with the BCS, but I love it, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. With the layout here, you've got the text layout, and you get to choose which layout you want to display. So we're just going to do 2 columns with a header and footer, and just like that, you've got the ability to add content in a very structured way. So much, much better than what we had access to do inside of 2007, and really good for creating these powerful dashboards that we're going to be building. So that said, let's build some dashboards. I'm going to go out here to the Insert menu and say I want to insert a web part. And because I'm running SharePoint Server and not Foundation, I have this business data folder that shows up here. And we've got a couple different business data web parts that show up inside of here. The one that I want to focus on for now is the business data list. And this business data list is essentially going to do a very similar thing to what the external list does. It's going to show external content type information as if it's inside of an external list or inside of a SharePoint list. So I'm going to configure this, click to open the tool pane, and we get to choose which external content type we want to work with. So we're going to hit the dialog box there. And let's see, let's go ahead and work with our sales regions. That's kind of fun. So we'll click OK there, and it's going to let us choose which view we want to work with. We've only got one, so that's easy. And then we've got a couple other options here, but I'm just going to press OK for now. And you'll notice these web parts act kind of interesting. When you first hit the page, it's going to show actually an animation while it's loading, and you'll see that that's an option here. So some people like that because it shows that the page loads right away, but then you've got this animation running, so it shows that it's doing something. But then one of the things that it does, you'll notice here as it's loading information, it changes the layout of the page as well. So before that finished loading, we didn't have a scroll bar left and right. And so some people don't necessarily like that functionality. So that's why inside of the tool pane you've got the option to disable that animation. And then it sets the size for you based on what it knows. And it's a lot better guesser than when it's showing that animation. So, okay, so now we've got our sales regions list. And we can go in here just like we could with the external list. We could choose to edit the web part. That's going to open up the task pane over here. And then we actually have the ability to edit the view here. I always forget where that's at, but once you're in edit mode, you get this edit view that shows up. So I'm going to click on that, press OK. A little bit of wonky behavior there, but that's okay. And it takes you to an edit view page that's very similar to any other list or library view page. So inside of here, I'm going to choose to not show some of this data. So really the only thing I want to show is just the name and the group. The other thing is we can set what the title field is mapped to. So we'll go ahead and select that. You don't have to, but you can. So we've got our filters, we've got our sorts. I'm just going to go ahead and press OK here. So here's our sales regions list, and again it shows the information that we selected. Really nice and easy to work with. So now I'm going to choose to edit the page again, and you can see what I'm talking about here with the loading animation. I'm going to select the region over here and say insert again, and we're going to take a look at another web part. So insert a web part, go into the business data, and then go into a business data item. So the business data item is really to display a single piece of content, so just a single row, as opposed to an entire list. So we'll go ahead and open the tool pane for that. And first you need to tell it which type of external content types you're going to be working with. So again, we're going to say sales regions and press OK. And then it's going to ask us which view, and then we'd have the option here to specify a specific item. So we could go through there and we could pick Southwest, and it would display just the Southwest item. But for now, I'm actually going to leave that blank. Down here, I can go into the fields, and I can choose which fields I want to display inside of there as soon as that loads. So if you've got a large number of fields, for instance, we don't really care about the row good. It's not really all that exciting of a field. We don't really even care about the territory ID. So we're going to uncheck those. We can change the order in which they're displayed. Lots of good functionality. I'll press OK there. You'd also be able to select which actions you want to use. I don't think we have time to do actions, but it's another one of the demos we do in the video, and they're really cool. Essentially, you can have it so that if you click on Northeast, for instance, you can create a custom hyperlink that comes with that Northeast option that would allow you to maybe open up a map. And it's basically allowing you to pass information from your external item to an external system. So in this case, for a mapping application, maybe you're passing it to Google Maps or Bing Maps or one of those. Very fun demo, but unfortunately, I just don't think we're going to have time today. So, okay, so we've selected our external content type, but it says, it doesn't really know what item to work with because we didn't select an individual item. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose to edit the web part again. And once we're inside of edit mode, rather than pick this item, I'm going to choose a web part connection. So we're going to say from connections, I want to get an item from the sales regions list. We'll select that, and that will wire up those two web parts for us. And you'll notice that the sales regions list web part changed to include these fancy icons along the left-hand side. You also get a notification that this web part's providing selected items to the sales regions web part. So I'll go ahead and press OK here. Make sure we're out of edit mode here. We'll save and close. Now we're in browse mode, so now we can click on Central, for instance. That selects the region, shows it to you here. It's sending that item over to this web part, and then that eventually will load. And again, because we haven't loaded those specific items, it might take a little bit for the first try, but after that, they should load up much faster. There we go. So now we've got some additional information here. So we can select Northeast. Loads much faster. We can select Germany, loads up quite a bit faster. The other thing to note, if we go into edit this web part, is you do have the option down here. It says data view properties in XSL editor. This is way beyond what we can do today, but this XSL that gets displayed inside of here is created for you automatically. But you can go inside of SharePoint Designer and customize exactly how this is displayed. So if we were to open this page up in SharePoint Designer, we could specify how many decimal points to show here. We could have, the cost year to date. If it's exceeding a certain number, we can make that column turn red. There's lots and lots of really good information that we can put inside of there. Pretty powerful stuff. And I think with that, Asif, that's kind of what I had for demos today.
That's perfect timing. It's exactly, well, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. So let me go ahead and switch over to my screen here. And like we said before, that let me go ahead and wrap up here. Then we'll take more questions. Also, I want to raffle up the couple of licenses over here for the BCS MetaMan. Those of you who are not familiar with BCS MetaMan, it's a very powerful utility. It's actually, from what I remember, it's like $1,200 per license. So it's they were really generous in giving us that to give away. Here, hang on a second. Where's my thing? I'm going to change the presenter, Raymond, to myself. Let's see. Here we go. So you should be able to see my screen. Can you see it, Raymond?
I can.
Okay, great. Once again, folks, you know, all this cool stuff that Raymond has shown us today, all that stuff is available in his DVD that he has produced. Not one PowerPoint. Everything is just a demonstration and explanation of exactly why would you want to do things, how do you do it, and then exactly what you have done and how it really makes sense to do it in your production environment. So Business Connectivity Services DVD is that. And I already talked about corporate licensing. If you have a need for that, let us know of any of the videos that you want to deploy on your corporate intranet. A few call to actions over here. There's a bunch of free videos that we have out on SharePointVideos.com. For Raymond's BCS video tutorial, that DVD, there's a couple of videos that are going to become free from there, and that's going to be posted next week on the site when the DVD officially gets released. Right now, the DVD is in the pre-release order price mode, so it's 10% off, and next week is the official release for the DVD. If you could sign up for our newsletter, bi-monthly newsletter, so information about our upcoming webinars and any kind of deals that are going on, anything else, and of course about the DVD releases, you'll get that from newsletter. Here's some of the resources that Raymond recommends over here. Todd Baginski's blog, Fabian Williams' blog, and of course the BCS, the SharePoint 2010 6-in-1 book, which Raymond has a few chapters on from BCS, and of course the DVD that we have out there. So with that said, let me go ahead and announce the 2 winners that we have. Let me pull this up here. Okay, so randomly, basically, from the list of people who have registered, 2 people came up over here. One is Kate Win. I'm going to butcher your last name. I'm sorry, but it's Wengiel. Wengiel. Kate, congratulations. You got one. And second one, Rob Malerney. Okay, so Rob, M-A-L-L-E-R-N-E-E. Congratulations to both of you. And you'll be getting an email from us with the information about exactly how you can utilize BCS MetaMan and how you can download it and the keys for that. All right, so that's that. Let me go ahead and pull up the questions and answer panel. And of course, Raymond, you can go ahead and go through the stuff as well.
Sounds good.
I went ahead and flagged a few of them for you. So I'll throw one out there, for example. Here we go. Is there a maximum number of records that you can have displayed in an external list?
That's a good question. There's, to my knowledge, I don't know that there's a maximum, but there is an out-of-the-box limit. There's what's called BCS throttling. SharePoint 2010 actually comes with a lot of different throttling options that you can configure. Most of those are for performance reasons, and that's exactly why it's here on the BCS items. So by default, you're not going to be able to pull back more than 2,000 items. Any attempt to do that's going to actually throw an error. So there are throttles that your system administrators can go in and set and modify there. So, you know, in some environments maybe you want it to be 1,000. In some environments maybe you want it to be 5,000. Again, you kind of want to be careful about where you're setting those values. Just like with a SharePoint list, a traditional SharePoint list, displaying that many items on a page does take up a lot of performance, both client side and server side. So obviously something you want to be aware of.
Great. Awesome. Go ahead. If you have any questions out there that you wanted to address, go for it as well. And if you don't, I'll go ahead and punt some to you.
Okay, I'm kind of going through. There are a lot of questions in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. Another one that comes to mind that I see over here by Pedro is external list. Talking about that further, can you export external list to Excel if you wanted to?
That's a good question. Export to Excel. Let me verify that before I say this, because I hate to get it wrong when I have it right here in front of me. But I've got a gut feeling for what that is, and I've got. figure I better check it. So I'll go with my gut while I wait for this to load. I don't know that you can export an external list to Excel. I know for sure there isn't rich support for Excel services or for Excel and BCS. But I'm trying to remember if you can just say export to Excel and have it open up just like a regular SharePoint list. You know, I don't think you can. And of course, this is taking forever to load now. But I have seen. Oh, there we go. Now it's open. Yeah. So the export to Excel is actually grayed out. It is disabled. That's so by default they don't let you do it. I have seen there's a local to Minneapolis. There's a guy named Eric Kraus. He's got a blog site out there. He's a Microsoft consulting professional, and he actually wrote a custom export to Excel. So all of the framework is there for you to kind of build those types of solutions, but they're really more about extending Office to talk to the BCS. But so the short answer is yes, you can do it, but it's not available out of the box.
Great.
Have to cut myself off or I'll talk about that all day. All right.
Do you have any that you see?
Well, I just found that one, so
okay.
There we go. Now I see which ones you've got flagged here.
So actually, a few of them we already talked about, so I've been flagging them. Let's see here. We have one that's talking about, if you get, once you try to make an external list, so let's say you're a, business data, you're an analyst basically, and you're trying to make an external list because you've been told that, hey, go ahead and make an external list. So you click on external list and you go ahead and make it, but it says access denied by business data connectivity. So what would that mean exactly?
So if the permissions are denied from business data connectivity, I think where I've seen that error is when the actual BCS user doesn't have access to it. So I don't know if you want to switch back over to my display, Asif. I can
sure.
I can walk through something really quick. We'll actually show.
Here we go.
Excellent. So let's see, share my screen, good to go. So inside of Central Administration, you can actually configure the BCS service application. That's where all this happens. We do touch on this in the DVD, but I'll do a really quick walkthrough of it. So under Application Management, Manage Service Applications, you get a list of all your different service applications. One of those is the Business Data Connectivity Services. If you click on that, that's going to open up the BCS service application, and you can do some configuration inside of there. And so inside of there is where you actually define the permissions for BCS to talk to your external systems. So remember, there were like 3 tiers of permissions that you had to set up. Here are our external content types: sales regions and sales team. And up here in the ribbon, you can see permissions, and we can set individual object permissions. I think it's going to yell at me. Yeah, we can only set one at a time. So set object permissions for sales regions. And this is going to bring up the permissions. So right now, my account and the SharePoint Search account, we have access to execute this external content type. And so what you would need to do is have your account added here in order for it to be able to talk to that external system. So by default, your administrators might be in here, your farm service users might be in here. But yeah, if your account's not in here, then it's not going to work that way. So hopefully
Great.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Here's a really good question by Bruce. Hey, Bruce. Here is saying, is the BCS connection available for the entire farm, or is it limited to each site collection?
That's a really good question, and actually that brings up the service applications piece that we're talking about here as well. So if you go back to Central Administration and look at this Managed Service Applications, you can have different service applications that are mapped to each one of your, is it at the site collection level? I think it's at the web application level, actually.
Right.
And so you wouldn't be able to specify it at the site collection level what's available inside of there, but at the web application level you would be able to specify which service application you're mapped to, and your data sources, your external content types, all those are linked in at the service application level. So the nice thing is you can spin up 4 or 5 business connectivity service applications, and you can have different ECTs inside of each one of those, so different external content types. But then you've got to basically create those other service applications, and then your administrators have to map those appropriately as well.
And that's a great thing with this invention of the service applications that's, of course, new in 2010, where you can have a many-to-many relationship between service applications to web applications, providing them services. And, of course, BCS just falls directly into it, just like you're saying. You can have one web application that might have just one site collection, and then you can map it up to one BCS service application. But the good thing is you can make as many service applications as you want for BCS, for example, and you make another one that has different kind of configuration, different ECTs within inside of it, and then go ahead and map that out to a different web application altogether.
Absolutely. Yep. So one question I saw that rolled by Asif was it was talking about SAP access in the BCS.
Oh, good one.
And that's kind of an interesting one because I haven't worked with it specifically, so I don't know for sure what BCS has for SAP. But what I do know is that SAP has a specific product out there called Duet,
right?
And that's probably what they would want to take a look at, because that's got a lot of specific extensions for both SharePoint and Office that talk specifically with SAP. So that's probably where they want to take a look at and see what that's got available for them.
Perfect. Here's a question by Kate. Are you sure you can't write back to external data sources in SharePoint 2007? Asif did a video that showed us how. I can't remember doing a video like that. I'm like, really? I think I did not do a particular video that showed how to write back to BCS, BDC, I should say, in 2007, because of course it was not possible. The only way that it was possible is if you used the BDC MetaMan, right? The BDC
right.
MetaMan, which was the precursor to what we just raffled off right now, which is BCS MetaMan. And using that, you could make up connections to write back. But inherently, I'm 100% sure that you could not write directly back to BDC, which is the old version of the product. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. All right. Anything else that seems exciting to you? We only have a couple of minutes now. Folks, I know there's lots of questions out there, but we won't be able to take all of them, of course. We're going to go ahead and take a couple more. So anything else? Yeah.
There's one in here that asks about what version of SQL Server is supported. I actually haven't seen any limitations on that, so I assume that it's essentially just using the SQL Server connections behind the scenes. I would assume that it's at least 2005 and above, possibly even more than that. But to be fair, I've only talked to SQL Server 2000 and Server 2008. And SQL Server 2008 R2. So for sure, both of those are supported. But again, I haven't seen any limitations on that. So
yeah, 2005 definitely works, and I completely agree with you that if you use SQL 2000, then that might not work. And you know what? Think about the possibility of having SharePoint 2010 and still working with SQL 2000. I don't know if anybody's doing that right now. So hopefully that completely throws a question out of the window in that case. But yeah, I kind of doubt it if it's going to go all the way back to SQL 2000. But anything 2005 and above, you should be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a few people asking about the InfoPath integration of BCS, which you covered already, and I think that's a very, very valid and very exciting topic because you have forms and you want to get your external data within these forms. And the external item picker control, which Raymond talked about earlier, that will let you go ahead and pick and browse from any external content type that you already have in your form or in your web application. And that will let you go ahead and pick the specific columns you're looking for to show directly in the external item picker. And it works great. Let's see. If there's one more that you want to take, Raymond, go ahead, your choice, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm still looking through. There's a lot of questions to scroll through here, and some of these folks have already left. So,
all right.
So if you see one in there that you want me to hit, that would work too.
Let's see over here. Wow.
This is a good one. What was demonstrated today that can be done in Foundation 2010? Honestly, everything that I showed today, except for the business data web parts, can be done with just Foundation. Some of the things that I talked about also that you wouldn't be able to do, connecting to Outlook, that when you're exporting items into Outlook like that, you do need Server for that as well. But other than that, I mean, you can get a lot of functionality just with SharePoint Foundation and the BCS. So that's really what I think is so exciting about the BCS in this version, is that you know, even folks that just have SharePoint Foundation can hit the ground running with this technology. So you've got Foundation, which is, you know, free or no additional cost, I think is the phrase we're supposed to use, and then you've got SharePoint Designer 2010, which is also free. So and with those, you can do some very, very powerful things.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here, but this has been pretty awesome. I think everybody enjoyed, hopefully, and see all the kind of effort that you've put into this webinar, Raymond. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody for doing all these things. And,
thank you.
And you know what, folks? All the stuff that Raymond has showed and so much more is available in the videos format. So if you have any questions about that, go ahead and shoot it to us. Let us know if there's some topics that we did not cover that you would like to be covered. Maybe we'll go ahead and make videos on that too. So thanks again, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.